Chair recognizes Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I appreciate that. As I said in my opening statement, I represent a rural district where weather trends and predictions are extremely important to the agricultural community. Dr. Meikiet, what are some of the things that we're doing well, and what are some of the things we could do better to increase preparedness for weather events and other effects associated with climate change?
Thank you for the question. I actually think we're doing fairly well. You look at the National Climate Assessment, and it shows a real effort on the part of the scientific community to start understanding what the medium and long-term effects of climate change are going to be for communities like your own. And so one of the things, and that activity should definitely continue. One of the things we might think about doing better, and the Science Committee and the science community generally can think about doing, is getting decision makers information that's relevant on the timescales over which they make decisions, right? So you mentioned you represent a farming community, you're a farmer yourself. You understand that what you think about the weather is a question for the next few days and the stuff you're going to do over the next few days. It's not necessarily clear that a 30-year projection is a helpful thing for what you're deciding to do this year or next year. But if you're designing a water system or a stormwater system or something like that, something you want to have around for a long time, then you really do want to have information around what the next 30 or 50 or 100 years are plausibly going to look like. So I think the scientific community, you could fairly say, is learning how to do that, how to transfer that information, and how to make the kind of that whole range of timeframes from decade to decades to centuries available to people who need to think in that regard.
My fear from this increased demand for immediate action is pushed down from the top, perhaps unrealistic proposals that aren't practical. The last thing we want to do is to dramatically raise energy prices for America. Dr. Meikiet, with the growing demand for fossil fuels worldwide, what can we do to ensure that we're leading the way with low-carbon energy solutions?
Well, in particular, I think the committee should continue to focus on and continue to be supportive of advanced research efforts for the things we think we're going to need in the future. And that means reliable, affordable, low-carbon energy. And in particular, low carbon is the key thing that the climate is worried about. So it doesn't particularly matter whether that's energy that's going to come from a windmill or a fancy kind of battery, or is going to come from fossil fuels with carbon capture and storage or advanced nuclear. Instead, the target should be having a broad array of energy sources that can be used here and abroad at affordable levels, and putting in place a research enterprise that is pursuing them with real vigor.
We make lots of investment in research in the federal government, and that's an important thing. How does the private sector advance what the government has started?
Well, the private sector is going to be the thing that actually scales those early run projects that receive justifiable government support into use, right? That's the thing that's going to matter in sub-Saharan Africa, it's going to matter in Southeast Asia, it's going to matter in Oklahoma. How do those things compete in a marketplace? And so making sure that those innovations diffuse out is a matter of transitional policies and market design.
From the back door of my house on the farm in western Oklahoma, I can see windmills, electric windmills, from one horizon to the other. Dr. Meikiet, you have referenced or referred to the goals set by the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change as ambitious. Is there a scenario in which those ambitious goals can be reached by transitioning to 100% renewable? By the way, those windmills don't always turn. They turn most of the time. We're a great source, but not all the time. Is there a scenario of how we could get to 100% renewable?
You could probably write one out on paper where it's physically possible, but I don't know that that's a necessary thing to do. And in particular, if like me and a lot of my colleagues and a lot of folks out there in the world, and your constituents, are concerned about climate and you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, having a broad portfolio of options seems like the best choice. And there is a raft of literature showing you that if you want a reliable, low-cost energy system that has a lot less carbon emissions than we have today, you want a wide variety of technologies available.
Thank you, Doc. Yield back the balance of my time, Madam Chairman.